was the ancient Chinese perspective of how a person's physical or body system works. And ancient Chinese, they divided a person's physical or body system into 4 or 5 elements. Some sources tell us 4, some told us 5. It doesn't matter. So we have the wind, where it consists of our breath, our movement, the water that consists of blood, sweat, tears, and urine, and so on and so forth. And a third element would be the earth element. And this consists of human flesh, hair, bones. And the last element will be the fire element. This makes up of our internal temperature, whether our internal system, internal body is hot or cold. And you don't need to agree with me. It seems to me that this makes some sense. It seems that a person's temperature can be quite high. If there's a lack of water, the water element, it can cause some disease. And traditional Chinese healer will try to maybe maintain the water level to make the person well again, or to increase the water level in different ways to make the blood function better, maybe flow better in our system, and maybe to prevent the person from dehydration. And sometimes the person may not feel well when there's wind in the system in different parts of the body. And sometimes when the earth element is problematic, sometimes people can feel it through the human breath. So my 2 cents, I think the interconnection of these basic elements are still applicable today. And they use their sense of hearing to detect some of these elements, or the sense of smell. Traditional Chinese healers, sometimes they use their sense of hearing or smell to detect the malfunction of any of these elements. Sometimes they try to detect whether there's any malfunction in any of these elements through vibration, like touching the pulse, or through the sense of touch. Any questions so far? And according to Dr. Google, this was how traditional Chinese healers attempted to treat Parkinson's disease. They used different herbs. And these are all Chinese names. And they use different compounds, or something similar to levodopa. And they also tried to improve people's quality of life. It seems that they use somewhat a more holistic approach when they treat Parkinson's and other diseases. And they use alkaloid to induce autophagy. And they also use herbs. And they target the gut area. And they use different herbs like ginger, licorice, atragalose, atragalose, I cannot say that, okay, sorry, to reduce inflammation. So it seems to me that they use ingredients they have or they had accessible in their vicinity back in those days. So this ties back into their ways of life or their culture. And they also use a root called Gastoldia for people to regain neuroprotective effects and to reduce oxidative stress. And when I asked Dr. Google how people in ancient India treat Parkinson's disease, I could not find anything. Maybe I did not use the right keywords. So, according to Dr. Google, it seems that traditional or ancient Indian societies, they practice Ayurveda medicine. They focus on natural healing with regards to Parkinson's and other diseases. And this was what traditional Indian societies, healers in those societies, this is what they use when they treat Parkinson's disease, cow's milk. Again, maybe this could be readily accessible within the Indian society. And we know Indians believe that cows were gods. Maybe cow's milk they consider sacred or holy, and maybe they believe that cow's milk can be used to treat Parkinson's disease. They also use legumes. It seems that stock they had within their vicinity. They use roots, seeds, different kinds of fruits. It seems that they could get all these things within their vicinity. And so, according to ancient Indians, Parkinson's disease was due to energy imbalance. They called it Kampa Vata. Vata means energy. Kampa means imbalance.
So do they have like, is it a high success rate with these, like the way that they're treating them, like?
Not find anything. Not for ancient China or India success rate. I think we can, maybe through historical texts, maybe not in English. That's my take. And when I Google, I couldn't find anything. Even in another language, maybe I did not use the right keywords. So do you think they are going to have a high success rate? What do you think? It seems that they use ingredients nearby. They had access to during those times. The same for Chinese. Do you think they had a high success rate?
Maybe for less severe things, but once it gets too severe, it's probably not much.
Maybe common illnesses. I think this is going to work. They try to, once again, strike a balance among the 5 or 4 basic human elements. Maybe for common illnesses, not too severe. I think it's going to work. That's my take. But I could be wrong. Yeah, they use traditional ingredients, herbs, different compounds. So all these things, it seems to me that it can be tied back to their culture or ways of life or value system. And these were way before the days of airplanes or railroads. They could not transport ingredients from one place to another. Nowadays, it's easy, we know, to transport vaccines, medicines, drugs from one place to another. That's my take. Any other thoughts? So this was the only source I could find. And it is a peer-reviewed journal written by MDs. So I couldn't find too much about how traditional Indians, they treat Parkinson's disease. It seems that the only thing mentioned was they practice Ayurveda, which is still practiced nowadays, and they focus on natural healing. And for some Indian tribes in America, the Blackfeet tribe and the Lumbee Indians, they use medicinal plants to stimulate the nucleus or the E2 related factor to produce enough dopamine to prevent mitochondria and to protect the neurons. So according to Dr. Google, it seems to me that this was how, or maybe this still is, I don't know. This was how certain tribes, certain Native American tribes, they did to minimize the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. They also, it seems that they also use something. they had access to something part of the nature. And according to this article, and this was a legit article, part of NIH, National Institute of Health, and this was written by MDs. It seems that people confirm that all these medicinal plants, yeah, they could do something to alleviate the symptoms of Parkinson's disease. They could really stimulate nuclear or E2 related factor to produce enough dopamine to protect the neurons. It seems that it has been confirmed by MDs and those with PhDs in anthropology, or people who are interested in natural medicine, those with credentials. Any questions so far? And the Chinese believe that different parts of the body, a person's body, are active in different times during the day. And if the person is having headache early in the morning, at dawn, it might be the cause of kidney malfunction because kidney was active during that time. So it seems that Chinese had a different approach to health and illness and to treatment. And when I asked Dr. Google, I could find most things about ancient China. Very limited information about ancient India and a little bit about Native Americans. So thus far, we see that people from other cultures, they had or they still have a different approach to health, illness, or treatment. And maybe they perceive and define the same illness differently. That's my take. Any question? Okay, so this was how the Chinese perceive how physical and mental health are interconnected. And according to ancient Chinese healers, these are the symptoms associated with mental illness, according to healers in ancient China. Tightness, different kinds of aches in different parts of the body, immune compromise, insomnia, and tiredness. So, as you can see, just by looking at this slide, we know that people from different cultures, they seem to focus on different symptoms pertaining to the same illness or disease. Ancient Chinese healers, or ancient Chinese in general, they only focus on these symptoms. And these were not exhaustive symptoms associated with mental illness. And according to ancient Chinese healers, when they have these symptoms related to their mental health, this is going to lead to sadness, losing interest, energy, losing interest or energy. Okay, I'm sorry. These are the symptoms pertaining to mental health, according to ancient Chinese healers. Okay, I'm sorry. I take it back. They focus on sadness, losing interest, losing energy, being anxious, being irritable, feeling hopeless, or having a sense of guilt. And according to ancient Chinese healers, when people in those days, in ancient China, when they experience any of these symptoms, it's going to increase the risk for these physical effects, tightness, different kinds of aches in different parts of the body, immune compromise, insomnia, and tiredness. So this was how the ancient Chinese healers perceived how physical and mental health are interconnected. And this is very different from how people in the West or people in industrialized countries centuries later perceive the interconnection between physical and mental health. And we will focus on the interconnection between physical and mental health in a few weeks. So this is just a synopsis. I'm just trying to show you how people in another culture, Asian China in this case, perceive the connections between physical and mental health. And the Asian Chinese believe that when there's energy of unbalanced emotion, this is going to affect a person's organ functioning. So this is another way they try to perceive the interconnection between mental health and physical health. So whenever this happens, their mental state was affected. It may affect the functioning of the different organs. So this may affect their physical health in years to come. This was what people in ancient China, they used to believe. And now, like what I just said last week, I think because of scientific research, and we have more techniques, more procedures, more technology, and more screening mechanisms, I think I have a feeling for countries that went through modernization, urbanization, and industrialization, I think people more or less use the same procedures, the same screening techniques, and other technologies to find out what's wrong with a person, to make diagnosis, to provide suggestion and treatment. Because now it's easy to share information. When somebody publishes something somewhere, it's accessible on the web in an instant. So I think now things have become more and more similar, but you don't need to agree with me. Any question? Okay, so the Chinese also perceive that the heaven, the human, and the earth are interconnected among one another. According to ancient Chinese, heaven would be our atmosphere, our climate, anything in the air, essentially. And humans pertain to our organs, different tissues, our genetic makeups, different biomarkers, and so on and so forth. And the earth would be the different food the soil can produce. And some food have heating effects, some food have cooling effects. Like lamb and beef, they can heat up the body. And if people did not drink enough water, maybe they can be dehydrated. It can affect their internal temperature. So it can affect some of the basic human elements. And pertaining to earth, people in ancient China also believe that people's temper or emotions can generate internal heat within the body. And it seems that it has some truth to it. Maybe the body can heat up to some extent. Not to the extent that people have a high fever. Maybe the body can slightly heat up when somebody is having a temper, a bad day, is angry, is anxious, is depressed. And if the person is more relaxed, I think the body cools down. I think these have some truth. So, because ancient Chinese, they believe the interconnection among these three entities, the heaven, the human, and the earth. I think this has something to do with the Chinese culture being more collectivistic, more group-oriented. So they try to find interconnection among something in the air, something within the human, and something in the ground, in the soil. I think this had something to do with their group-oriented culture, but I could be wrong. Maybe the same with this. Because they consider these basic elements being interconnected among one another. Whenever one is messed up, it's going to affect another. Maybe when somebody is angry or anxious, maybe it increases the internal body temperature. And this is going to affect the water level within the person's system. I don't know if this has something to do with the collectivistic culture, where everybody is dependent on another person or one or more person within the same community. Because this was not how the Westerners, doctors in Europe or America, perceive illness and disease or treatment. Am I right?